Hello and welcome to the rescheduled episode 3 of AAGT Informs. We are so happy to have Dr. Beljan able to join us today and discuss the multitude of responses to uncertainty in our gifted children. We hope that you will engage with each other in the chat and utilize the Q&A function so that we can make this an interactive session. We are building an amazing community of gifted supporters in Arizona and hope that you join us as we continue to grow and advocate for these unique students. As a reminder, we have many membership perks available and we continuously look for new opportunities such as partnering with Renzulli Learning. Educators can sign up for Renzulli Learning for a 6-month free trial. Parents receive 1 free year subscription, Renzulli Learning Home Edition, when you join as a member of AAGT. Make sure you join us for Parent Institute 2020 on October 17th. We will be providing this seminar virtually, so you have access to all breakout sessions, which are now listed on the website. Of course, keynote speaker Otto Siegel, as we discover the joys of being gifted. Register today. I am not sure why my images aren't popping up. I apologize for that. So today wraps up this 10-week series of AAGT Informs, but we are looking at other ways to continue to offer resources and information to you. You can, of course, watch and rewatch the recorded sessions on our website. In the meantime, please do not hesitate to reach out to me directly at director@azgifted.com with any help or resources you may be looking for. I'm very happy to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Paul Beljan. Dr. Beljan's professional focus is on gifted intelligence, traumatic brain injury, alcohol drug-related neurodevelopment deficit, learning disorders, and attention and executive functioning deficit diagnosis and interventions. Welcome to Dr. Beljan.
Hi, Heather. I'm having trouble getting my video back on. I don't know what the problem is.
Uh-oh.
I'm not an expert in that.
Let me see if I can help you on my end. Don't know if I can turn you on.
Here we go.
Got it? There
Yeah.
we are. Well, hi and welcome.
Hi.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do, what your work is with gifted students?
Well, I've been working with gifted for a lot of years now. I was trained by Dr. Jim Webb, who unfortunately left this earth a while ago. I co-wrote the Misdiagnosis and Dual Diagnosis books with him and Ed Amond. I also do a lot of gifted testing. One of the things that I'm trying to do this year is I have a goal of trying to offer or administer 100 free IQ evaluations to schools when teachers can pick children who don't have opportunities, family might not have monies to see someone like me. And I want to try to help identify those kids, usually Black or brown. And I'm just trying to give back that way this year. So if teachers out there are listening to this and they have a child that they think would be, could benefit by such an assessment at no charge, they can contact me through my website and I'm happy to do it. Not all kids do well on a COGAT. Not all kids do well on an Agliari. And sometimes it takes that one-to-one kind of coaxing along to help them get the most out of them. And I want to try to identify those kids that fly under the radar.
Well, that's an awesome opportunity. Thank you so much for sharing that. So they can just go to your website and contact you through your website?
Yes.
Perfect. I'll include the link in the follow-up email after that. So,
Thank you.
Well, today I think we want to just kind of have a discussion on what our children's responses have been during these uncertain times, all the changes that are happening around us, and just kind of have like a candid discussion and conversation with you. Because I'm a parent. Most of you may or may not have been on the past ones, but I am a parent. I have 2 children of my own, and I am also the stepmom to 3 children. And we have quite an array of emotions and abilities in our house, and things have definitely been chaotic the last few months. So I know from my own personal experience that it's just been an interesting adventure these last few months, and I mean their whole lives, to be honest. So I guess I'll just kind of jump in here.
Sure.
So we all know that our gifted children respond to circumstances and their environment with more intensity and sensitivity than their age level peers. So in what ways can we help what ways can we help diffuse the intense emotional reaction so that our children are more able to adapt to the changes in their environment? I want to be very specific in saying right now, some of the biggest obstacles that we've been running into are the online learning. During a live Zoom class, when our child is feeling frustration, anxiety, they might start crying, they might start yelling, they might turn it on and go lay down in bed. How do we work through these problems, and what do we do if they don't even want to sit through a class?
Well, my response to that is to take a giant step backwards. First of all, I kind of liken it to, tantrum behavior. Once a child starts tantruming or a little guy starts tantruming, I really can't make that stop. There's not a lot I can do. I let it wind out, and then we try to recover from there. I think the same thing would hold true with this, that what I want to do is more of a preemptive strike where we're going to talk a lot about what it is going to be like, what the difficulties have been. I want to prepare the child for it and have some tools in their pocket for when they go into it, as opposed to wait for the meltdown to happen and then try to deal with it, okay? So there's numerous ways to do that. One is just mindfulness and having an open discussion about what are the assumptions that the child has about this. A lot of times kids, especially gifted kids, will act on their assumptions, right? The assumption seems kind of logical, and a lot of times those assumptions are kind of catastrophizing the situation. If this one moment doesn't go well, then the whole thing is awful, right?
Oh,
so if we can have those kinds of discussions first, and that could even be role-playing the situation. You and I spent a little time before the lecture today and chatted on Zoom and kind of worked out the bugs for the most part. And the same thing with them. You could have a Zoom meeting with the child in different rooms and try to work out what some bugs would look like and throw them some curveballs on Zoom and see if they can problem solve. Another tool.
I really like that.
I do too. I just came up with it.
Good job.
Another tool that I like is to teach the child, the old 4-7-8 breathing thing, where you have a tool in your pocket that you can access when you start to get stressed. So 4-7-8 is you breathe deeply in the nose for 4, you hold it for 7, and then you blow it slowly out your mouth for 8. Okay, and for a kid it might be 4, 5, 7, something like that. But the point is this, there's some research that shows that if you practice that 5 in the morning and 5 in the evening, that you're gonna, in a week or so, train your body that this breath means relax. So you can't have competing feelings. You can't have stress and relaxation at the same time. So if I can teach the child a method and train their body to relax on the cue of this breath, right? Then they can do it any time when they're just ramping up the roller coaster, okay? So practicing that with them, modeling it with them, and then having maybe a cue for if I'm in the room when you're on Zoom for school and it seems like you're getting stressed, maybe just a touch on the shoulder is the cue of, hey, do your breathing. I'm not going to call you out in front of your class, or I'm standing behind the camera. I'm like, hey, do your breathing. I hold up a sign, right? Because, they don't have to see. And this breathing technique is something that you can do and nobody even knows that you're doing it. So I used to do it so much that I can just think about it and I start to get a little relaxed, because your body will respond to the breath if you practice it enough, and it's powerful. So if they have a mechanism to bring themselves down, but the key is it likely has to be pointed out. kids are not good at reading themselves when they're ramping up. The other key to this too is you have to try to intervene with the breath before they're too anxious. Once they get past that certain point, you know, it's the 2-year-old tantruming in the mall at Christmas time. There's not a darn thing you can do about it, right?
No. I know that. I know that 2-year-old tantrum.
Yeah. And then you have the added stressor of the child is now embarrassed. I melted down on camera in front of everybody. And now we have a problem about the problem, right? When really the original problem is something that if we had role played it a bit, or we chatted about it, or we've seen them already do it, we can help them to identify it. We can help them to demystify their assumptions. Well, let's question your assumptions. You know, does this one incident really make the whole thing bad, right? And a brighter kid can, in a calm moment, not in front of the camera, tolerate that kind of probing. Well, let's question your thinking. Because again, if I'm acting on an assumption, likely my assumption is wrong, and therefore my response is wrong. It's incongruent to the situation. And then you add that hyper intensity to it, and you just make it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. And I definitely really like to emphasize the breathing with my kids as much as possible. I think we probably need to be better practice. A little, so I just read this nonfiction or this fiction book. It was called, I forget, now I can't remember the name of the book, but it was about these children that spontaneously combust when they're frustrated. And so they did all these breathing techniques and yoga in the morning, and they eventually were able to just work through it before they burst into flames. So I really do feel like that is an effective tool to have in your toolbox for the future, not only as a kid, but even as an adult. So I use that tool all the time.
Well, you know, the other thing about it too is this: you're not in class technically. You can wear your pants, you know, you could have Velcro under the table as a little stem kind of thing.
Right.
You could have your favorite stuffed animal sitting out of the camera view, anything that you associate with being calm. You know, you could have.
That's a really good point.
I just thought of that one too. You know, but you could have these things that cue relaxation. You remember, you know, probably in college, if you ever took like Psych 101, the whole idea of state trait learning. It's that. If I learn relaxation in a certain situation, then when I'm in that situation, I relax.
Yep. That makes total sense.
And that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. And I would provide that for the child too. Hey, sometimes this isn't going to work perfectly. That doesn't mean you're a failure. It means we're still working on it. Because again, so many of these kids are so, you know, black and white polarized that if I didn't do it perfect, then I fail. And they need to hear that, you know, a little bit of not perfect is fine. We work through it.
Oh, definitely. That is, I mean, we all know that most of those gifted children are strong in the perfectionism category. So absolutely need to emphasize not being perfect at all times. And then, on that same topic, we've kind of, as parents and teachers, we're kind of at this point in schooling where we've had two choices. We get to choose to go online, or we get to go in person. And then I know with our gifted students in this house, neither of those choices have been ideal. We have a lot of fear around the pandemic from things that they've heard from friends, from social media, from their parents, like whatever the case may be, they really just have this fear. So they're afraid to go in person. They're afraid that people are going to cough on them or whatever. Online is also not perfect because there's technology difficulties. And we have one child that is like super computer driven. So when Microsoft Teams takes too long to load, he's done. He doesn't even want to deal with it for the rest of the day. So now we've made our choices. We have chosen either in person or online, but we still are laser focused on why the choice we made is not ideal. How do we deal with that?
Well, you know, while you were asking the question, one thing I was thinking is, you know, the old thing of writing your list of why it's good. You know, what you have, you know, at school on computer, pros, cons, right?
Mhm.
You do that list, you talk about that list, and you keep the list out, right? Keep it present as, hey, this is the list that you came up with, right?
Right.
Remember, this is an advantage to you. You solved this problem. Now, that doesn't mean you solved the overarching idea of COVID. Nobody has and nobody
Right.
will. But in other words, this is the piece that you can control. You know, I don't know, there's the old AA thing, you know, that serenity prayer, grant me the wisdom to, you know, control the things I can and know what I can't control, whatever it is. But it's that kind of logic, a very simple logic of, you know, Timmy, you made this beautiful list. You got great pros and cons. You made a very informed decision here. And so let's control what you can. But again, this is not something I'm doing right at the moment, 30 seconds before school starts. This is something we did the day before, 2 days before. We did it 2 days in a row, right? And this is a theme that we've been talking about. And we can generalize that theme to other things, pros and cons about, you know, dinner, exercise, whatever, to get the idea of, I don't have control of everything. That would be a fallacy. But there are bits of this that I can deeply have control of, and that can be very soothing, right? And
Yes.
again, if I come at the situation from a point of being soothed and calm, hopefully I never get over the top of the roller coaster. So again, what I said before is, I think role playing on Zoom is a good idea to mess it up and see how do you fix it, right?
Yeah.
And not just how to fix it, but we write down, how did we fix that? Back in April, I did a 3-hour Zoom lecture for the American Board of Pediatric Neuropsychology conference. The conference was supposed to be in Vegas. It had to be canceled. We did the whole thing, 400 people from my kitchen, 400 people on Zoom. And the way that it was done was, we had several people prepping it, doing this very thing, throwing curveballs at the speaker, solving as many as we could problems in advance. So, you know, we knew what to do. We had kind of a flow chart of how to solve things. It went off without a hitch. We did 3 days of lectures to 400 people, not a single problem, because we prepared.
Congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yes, that was. But again, that whole prep thing, you know, not as a dig on parents, but you know, what a lot of us do is we shoot from the hip. You know, how can I deal with this right now? As opposed to that idea of, I know this is coming, what am I gonna do? How can I plan ahead for this? Because that is even another layer of teaching the child, hey, your parent has already thought this out, right? And now I'm gonna teach it to you. This is how we do it. So I do it for my work, and we're doing it for you now, right?
Yep. No, that makes total sense. And that actually kind of leads me to my next point, from a parents and even teachers' perspective. We're overwhelmed. We're busy. We're not just helping our children with online schooling. We are also working or managing other children, or, you know, we have multiple children in our house with different personalities and different ways that they respond to stress. You know, we have one child that yells and screams. We have another child that cries, one who withdraws. You know, how can we as adults manage the array of feelings and emotions, but also without exhausting ourselves? You know, how do we manage our own feelings so that way we are better prepared to help our children?
Okay, so that's a pretty multifactorial question. The first part, parents. You have to have, again, some solutions to problems that you know are gonna happen. You need to, if you're both working from home, you need to tag team. You know, here's my schedule today. I have to be on the computer between 1 and 2, no matter what, right? You're gonna have to cover. I can cover from you 2 to 3, whatever, but we have that worked out in advance so that we don't get in a fight. You're not helping me, and that transcends, that stress transcends to the children in terms of, God, nobody's in control. This is ridiculous. And I
Yes.
already feel out of control, okay? So again, the more we can plan, the more we can anticipate solutions and solve things before they happen. You know, instead of flipping on the TV when you go to bed and you know, turn the TV off or throw the TV out of the bedroom, and do stuff like this before you go to sleep. This is what our plan is for tomorrow. Here's our plan of action. And then you can even convey that to the children. Here's the schedule. Dad is got 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, golden time, nobody talks to him. After that, you can talk to him. We know this in advance. I will be helping you at this time. It's kind of like, I've taught parents for years that, you know, when you go on an outing as a family, you pick which parent is in charge, right?
Yeah.
And the children know, okay, mom is the designated in charge person for this outing, which means that, Timmy, if you want something, you ask mom, you don't ask dad. And if you ask dad, dad's going to direct you to mom. And if somebody needs a discipline, mom's doing it. Okay, so there's no splitting. We've figured this out already, that sort of thing. Now, the other way I was thinking about this too is when I have worked in, you know, severe behavior handicap classes or different, you know, residential environments where I'm in charge of several kids, my first goal was to establish a unity amongst us all, right? This is our clan. This is our tribe. And we could even name it something special, okay? The Belgian mites or whatever, but this is ours and we protect ours, which means that, you know, there's a certain overarching way that we're all going to look at things, right? Our relaxation methods, our organization, our allowance for a little bit of variance. But within that tribe, we have different roles for people, right? Like if I have one kid who is, you know, can tolerate adversity more, well, maybe he's the one who's going to be in charge of Timmy, who is a little more rigid. And, you know, and it doesn't mean that he's talking Timmy out of crying. It just means he goes over and puts an arm around Timmy.
He's a good distraction or like just a good
like
mediator, right?
Not even, well, yeah, but nothing too sophisticated. You know, it's amazing to me that, you know, we don't get taught as children real simple methods to join with someone. Like, for instance, someone's crying, you just go sit next to them. You just sit with them. Or they're crying, you know, you just sit with them and put your head on their shoulder. And if they're in your family and parents model this with each other and with the kids, again, this is some of the stuff that we do in our tribe. Now, the other part of that is that something that's so important with kids, I believe, is routines and rituals and things that
and for adults too.
Well, exactly. You know, think about it this way. I forget what it's called, but everybody at Christmas knows that calendar that goes on the refrigerator and you open up the little door each day, right? And you see the little picture of what's going on until it gets to be Christmas or something like that.
Right.
And we take turns, you know, today's my day, tomorrow you get to open the door. But that calendar comes out every year, right? We count on it. And it's a way of establishing trust. And if I trust implicitly my environment, because when my parents say that something is going to happen and it happens, and they even say, hey, I said this was going to happen, and look, it's happening right now, then I can believe in that. So in other words, instead of trying to always solve a problem, I'm laying a bedrock, a cornerstone from which we operate that is very sound, that we can always go back to. We can always retreat to certain behaviors, sitting next to each other, head on the shoulder, an arm around someone, going over and, hey, breathe with me, you know, anything like that. Or just, hey, look at me. And getting you out of this disorientation and look at my eyes, and lowering your voice, turning your body so you're not squared off. all these little behavioral things build into the whole overarching structure of this. But so basically, again, what I'm saying elaborately is plan ahead.
Yep.
And practice what you're going to do and make it overt to the children. Hey, we're going to do this. Hey, we're doing this. Hey, we did that. Wasn't that great? Right? Now, I know
that's great advice.
And you can't do it 24/7. You know, something I've been saying to parents recently is they'll bring up something that just isn't that important. And I'm like, is that the hill you want to die on? Right?
We say that all the time in our house.
Yeah, is that the most important thing, soldier? And when people see it that way, it's like, no, it really isn't. There are bigger fish to fry, to mix metaphors. But you know, if that is one of the starting points of in our tribe, how we approach things, is that the biggest problem right now? Or is there something a little bigger we should be dealing with? That sort of thing. So again, part of this then too is just the simple word of normalizing as much as possible. Maybe we sit down and have a little powwow before school starts and talk about, this isn't ideal, right? But let's think about again why we're doing it. What is the benefit of doing it? What have we discussed? So you're kind of prepping them for the day. It's just like the coach giving the locker room speech before they hit the field. They already knew what they're supposed to do, but now we're going to reinforce it a little bit, gently and you know, warm, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And my fiance and I definitely, we like to emphasize very like how unified we are. We definitely sit down. We have a joint calendar. We put our schedules on it. We put all of our kids' schedules on it. We know exactly the way the day needs to roll. And we also really, I mean, obviously life is always going to throw curveballs. We get thrown them all the time. 7 people in the house, like you're never going to know what's going to happen. I mean, 2020 itself is showing us that.
Yeah.
So
you said a key word though. You said we empathize, okay?
Yes.
And here's a good behavior to empathize with a child. This is, you know, it's not Psych 101, but it's chimp easy. If I simply state to the child how I think they're feeling, which takes empathy, right? Usually that's enough to calm the kid. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel, right?
Yep.
So for instance, you try to go for the feeling beneath the behavior. The behavior is the expression of one thing, but usually the feeling below it that's driving that behavior is what you have to address, not the behavior. So for instance, the child's frustrated, this isn't working right. You're really frustrated. Yeah, okay, well, what can we do with that? And it's a no-lose situation for me, because if the kid says, no, I'm not frustrated, oh, well, what are you then? You see?
Yep.
Then they're in the position, oh, I'm this. Oh, okay, well, that doesn't seem so intolerable. Maybe there's a piece of that we can deal with, but I have to remain really calm.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I start ramping, the kid's going to ramp up with me.
Oh, they definitely feed off the parents. I know that for a fact. Like, so that, I mean, that's just like babies sense their mother's stress and it just keeps going. And then definitely can understand that.
I was lecturing in Prague over the last summer, and the woman in the audience, she gave me a scenario of a kid in the hospital and how she had to deal with him, and the kid just would not comply with anything, okay? And she was getting more and more frustrated and upset about this, and I did this with her. You're really angry about this. It must have felt so out of control. And as soon as I hit it exactly where it was for her whole, yeah, because we all know that feeling of when someone gets exactly how we feel, and they're like, it's like this, isn't it? Yep. It's not difficult to do, and you know that feeling feels that someone gets it. Yeah, and you immediately come down a notch or two.
We all want to be understood, for sure.
So if we simply can calm down and think about how that child's feeling, man, this just feels out of control, doesn't it? Yeah, it really does. Okay, what piece can we control right now? What's one piece, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, well, speaking of heavy situations that we've been experiencing in 2020, such as we're not getting our TUI or just gifted education needs met. There's been a lot of racial relations out there that our kids are hearing, seeing, experiencing. There's the stress of the pandemic. There's probably, I have kids that are in this house that are super into the election, and that is stressing them out.
Yep.
Oh, from my understanding, and I meet with I have a counselor myself. I think I'm really into psychology. I didn't finish going through that route, but I do enjoy it. But I know that children work more from the emotional brain versus rational thinking. And that could absolutely affect depression, anxiety, and other emotional thoughts. So can you maybe explain a little bit about, the thought process between emotional brain and rational brain, and how we as adults can help them work through those emotions specific to just the ramp up of like anxiety and depression, and then what triggers can we look for?
Well, in terms of that, emotional brain, I'm really big on just flat out teaching the child how that works and drawing a brain and showing them how it works, as opposed to making an abstract comment about your emotional brain or your monkey brain or your reptile brain, whatever.
They're not going to understand that necessarily.
No, but if I am showing them, I'm appealing to their intellect, that I'll show you something. If I can draw a very simple brain, whoops, that's a bad one. Just 1 second.
It's okay, I'm not an artist either.
Okay, so here's a real simple brain, right?
Okay.
Here's your frontal lobe, your limbic system's coming down here. Here is your emotional brain right there.
Yes.
Your frontal lobes, right, are where all this information goes to. So if I can simply teach them, that little piece down there gets excited and crazy, and it sends all of its excitement to the frontal lobe. It's the frontal lobe's job to inhibit it, to put a dimmer switch on it. That's always a good term, a dimmer switch, right? But sometimes that lower brain gets so excited that it literally overwhelms the frontal lobe, right? So again, this is why we want to do our relaxation stuff. This is why we want to do our breathing stuff, why we want to have our relaxation triggers around us, that sort of thing. And ultimately, if none of that works, probably just need to take a break.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, overtly teaching it with visuals. So they're getting it auditorily, visually. It's extremely simple. It's just a back and forth system. This one is supposed to stop this one. You can even use examples like, playing poker. I use this when I lecture all the time, that, if you have 1,000 gummy bears on the table and the child draws into a straight flush, they're going to jump out of their skin. It doesn't mean they're impulsive. It means that their frontal lobes are kid-level frontal lobes. They don't mediate all that feeling coming forward. But what does an adult do? They give a poker face, and you can't tell what they have in their hand, okay? Or analogies like that I think are really helpful.
Yeah.
So also, the other thing I want to do with that analogy, or with this whole idea of, emotional brain versus thinking brain, is that in part, this is an automatic system, okay? And it's not about guilt. It's not about failure. It is about your brain simply works like this. And part of what happens with your brain when it works like this is you start coming up with all kinds of scenarios in your head. What if this? What if this? What if this? And that's what a gifted kid does. And this is why we see so many more of them that seem like they have anxiety, because they think things a few steps further out that they can't necessarily developmentally handle. So they get themselves ramped up. So again, it's the thing of, do I have some trigger statements? Hey, are you doing that thing we talked about where you're thinking out too far? And you need to come back to earth a little bit because you can't control all that stuff. But again, you see how I said, are you doing that thing that we've talked about where we normalized it? So I'm just I'm even going to let you know at that conversation that, I'm going to point it out to you because you're not going to realize it when it happens, right?
Right.
It's kind of like somebody with a brain injury. They can say, oh, I was in a car accident. I injured my brain. It makes me do A, B, and C. But the problem is that when they're doing A, B, and C, they don't know they're doing it, so they can't make themselves not do it. So they need that person, even though they understand the process, they still need that person to say, hey, Bob, you're doing B right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I am. I better stop that. You see?
Oh, I totally understand. I always say that my fiance and I are yin and yang, and we both are both emotional and we're both rational. But when we're certain situations, my emotional side will come out more than my rational side, and the same for him. So if we come together before we respond, we can respond together. And well, I mean, the same absolutely would go with our children, I would assume. So,
and the parent doing that, or even in a relationship doing that, someone has to set their ego aside.
Yeah.
To say, hey, this is what we're doing. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. We're doing this right now.
Yep.
And so again, it's the same thing with the child. I'm going to be that kind of overseeing, monitoring thing with the child of, hey, you're doing that thing. And we already talked about it's not your fault. It's not about that. It's just that you don't realize when it starts getting out of control. And so, or I could even just say, hey, 478. Boom. You know what that means.
Yeah.
And we agree that that's the trigger because that's not embarrassing to say. No one knows what we're talking about.
Right.
And I do 478 and I calm down.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we, as parents, we know our children. Usually know them really well. The kids, I know my teenagers, I have a high schooler and a middle schooler. They don't think we know them, but we do know them really well. So we're able to identify when they're, in that moment. And so I do agree. It is important that we have to take that time just to make sure that we are there for them when they're heading down that path. But for teachers, at first, when they're first meeting students, they probably aren't going to see this right away. And also online learning, I don't know how, there's no real way that you can get to know your students well. So it's definitely, is there any thoughts or ideas of how you can do this virtually?
That's tough because the thing is that you can't feel the person. You can't feel the vibration of their chest when they're right next to you talking. You're missing out on all that tactile stuff and closeness and context that as humans we don't really think about it, but we're experiencing it, and it has all those soothing things. I mean, you think about it when you were a kid and your teacher would kind of walk around the room and lecture on a topic, and maybe they put their hand on your shoulder or they just stand next to you, and there's a vibe you get, right?
I always thought I was in trouble.
Yeah, but the thing is that they can't do that in this scenario. So I think, again, if I was a teacher, I would go back to my whole tribe thing and say, look, this first part of this day, we're gonna talk about our tribe. We're gonna name our tribe. We're gonna talk about, what is unique about our tribe versus another tribe, and how do we protect our tribe? How do we show respect within our tribe? How does our tribe accomplish things together? Because we're not going to be able to individualize things. So we have to work, we're going to have to work as a group, right?
Yeah, that's great. And that is definitely something you can use online and in person once we're all back in that. It seems like, look at this, you're just nailing it left and right today. Well, and the other thought I had, with working more together as teams. I know as a kid, I hated working as a group and team. I wish I probably needed to have that ability taught to me better when I was younger. I've worked through it as an adult, but that's going to be such an important aspect that these kids are learning right now, is that we are working together as a team. We are a community. We are in this together. I know that has kind of been a cliche this year. We're in this together, but I think that is an important point to make, that we are a tribe. And I love the idea of having like a name. I like it for the family and I like it for the classroom,
Yeah.
for
You have
sure.
different tribes that you're part of different tribes all day long.
Yeah.
And it breeds, again, that familiarity. And with familiarity and tradition and routine, I have these little things that I can depend on, right? But also, you know, maybe the overarching idea at the end of the day is pointing out when it worked. Like, for instance, you know, Timmy, I noticed today that, you know, your computer kind of slowed down on you, and I saw your shoulders go up a little bit, but then you brought them back down and you figured something out. How did you do that? So when a child does what we want, it's really important to ask them, how did you do that? Because there's a few things about this. One is, it's incredibly empowering. Well, I don't know. Let me think about it, right? They don't know how they're not used to operationalizing their thinking like that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because usually they're going to say, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Let's think about that. There's something you did. There's something you told yourself. I want to know because I want to teach it to your sister. You know, somehow you did this. I wonder what you did. And if they really can't come up with it, I wonder if you did this, the thing that we talked about, and you feed it to them, okay? Then the follow-up statement is this. Are you aware that you can't lose that? You did it, so you have that ability, so it's never going anywhere. How incredible is that for you, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying good boy. I'm saying I teach this to my staff. We try not to use the word good. We try to instead say what it was that was good. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
What did you do to make that incredible outcome that you've never been able to do before? What turned for you? And really get them to start to think, and maybe we should jot that down. Tell me, I'll write it down for you. I'll be your scribe, right? Because I'm going to be a little energetic about this because I'm excited about this. I want them to get excited about it. You did it. How did you do it? And then the empowerment of, you can't lose that. You can't unring the bell. And that's powerful.
Yeah. Well, and it helps them also become in control of their own abilities as well once they realize that this is them doing it. So, and that gives them that confidence.
It's just like I said earlier, we're going to do this. Hey, we're doing this. Hey, we did that. So we have talked about a certain behavior and we problem solved it and we role played it and you did it. Let's come back to that because otherwise we're only focusing on the stuff that doesn't work. I want to focus on what worked. And it would be one thing that day that worked. They might have had a really hard day. You notice I didn't say horrible day, a hard day. And we'll focus on that thing that worked. And how then could that maybe generalize to some other things? Because, man, you knocked it out of the park with that one today.
Yeah.
And they're not even going to be aware of it. Really? I did that? Yeah, you did that, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I do like that. That's great. So I have a couple questions that have come in from attendees. And again, just as a reminder, we have the Q&A chat open. So if you have any questions specific for Dr. Beljan, please put those in there. But what advice do you have for new gifted teachers? What is the I guess, most solid piece of advice you could say when you're newly in the gifted scene?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll say what every prof ever told me, which is read, 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 right?
Yep.
You know, you can't learn it all, but you can learn a lot, and there's always something new to learn. You read, read, read. You talk to other teachers who might be master teachers and been there for 10 years, the people who've already invented the wheel, right? So there's that. You have to, I believe, stay true to yourself. Don't try to act like somebody else. You know, it's funny because in psychotherapy, in psychology, if you're going to be a therapist, they say, well, you should have gone through psychotherapy yourself, you know, because if you're going to be the therapist, you don't want to be the craziest person in the room, right? And what a lot of people will do is they'll go to therapy and then they'll take on the behavior of their therapist, and it's totally disingenuous. So you have to relax and make it yours somehow, your own way of doing it. And I often think about when I'm working with a child testing or something, what would I want to hear when I was a kid? And that helps me kind of reframe what I'm doing. I'm not trying to solve anything. I'm just trying to come up with an idea. What would have really made me feel good, right? So I think always trying to walk in a child's shoes that way can be really helpful. Stating the obvious. Hey, I'm not sure what to do today right now. Maybe we can all work on this together in our tribe. And this is one of our things that our tribe has to work out, because even though I'm the chief, I don't have all the answers. You know, I need my computer guy in my tribe. You know, I need my artsy person in my tribe. I need, everybody has a role or something like that. So this is how our tribe works together. It's not just me. And I think another really big one, which is really hard to do, is observe, 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 and watch and listen. Listen to what the meta message is, right? Watch for when the problem doesn't exist. I mean, I can't say that one enough. When you watch for when the problem doesn't exist, that's where the answer is. That's where the solution is. So that's why I even said about the kid, how did you do that? So it's never, why did you do that? How did you do this? It's a totally different way of looking at it, right? So if that's my schema with a child also, is looking for when it's working and trying to generalize that and get my ego out of the way, you know, then again, I've got this, again, I'm building my cornerstone. I'm building my identity of who I am doing this and making it my own. That's
well,
hard.
what about,
it's a long time.
It is hard.
So don't rush.
Don't watch?
No, don't rush. There's no hurry.
Don't rush. Yeah, absolutely. And we got a lot of, I mean, I could totally understand that. Don't rush and just make sure we take our time. Well, but what would, if you are in a situation?
Wait, it is what you and I talked about before we started this today, briefly. The thing I said, you were telling me a little scenario, and I said, well, think about it. You're probably gifted. A lot of our parents are gifted. A lot of our teachers are gifted. Have they identified in themselves what is their gifted isms so that they know when they're, you know, going down the right or wrong path, or they need to adapt and adjust a different way? How much are they operationalizing their own thinking in, well, my giftedness tends to make me kind of compulsive, and I like everything at right angles, and I hate it when Timmy over there always has a mess on his desk. Well, Timmy's not doing that to bother me.
I feel seen.
Yeah, that's my thing now that I'm putting on Timmy, and of course Timmy's going to react negatively because that's not his way of being. Do you see?
Yep.
So I
I see that.
own giftedness.
Absolutely. I
already cut you off.
I definitely feel that 100%. I am very, very, I have a hard time sometimes, like just pulling back and saying, okay, my daughter is a mess. That's okay. It's a creative mess. Definitely.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what if we are in a scenario, and I don't know necessarily want to say where it's not working, but what if we have a child that's already exhibiting severe anxiety and depression? Is it different for gifted students?
Are you talking about like at home or in the class?
I mean, either, I suppose. It's going to look differently, I think, at home versus in the classroom. So maybe both scenarios. So if as a parent, we're already noticing that we have a child that's severely anxious and has depression, what do we do at that point?
First of all, I think I can manage their anxiety easier than depression. You know, depression is something drastic has to be going on for a child chronically to cause a depression, I think. You're not just going to get depressed as a kid necessarily. I mean, you know, you get some blue kids, but for the most part, that's really not going to happen. So to me, the depression is maybe a red flag of what's going on at home. What does this child tell himself that he can't, let himself off the hook of? So depression to me is a little bit of a different animal. I'm not going to push on it at all. I'm going to try to roll with it as much as possible. So again, that simple behavior of, maybe I'll stand next to that child for a while. I'll just stand next to them or sit next to them, you know, and then if someone else does something silly, I might help them. Look at that. I'm getting the power, I'm getting my attention off of you and trying to focus you outward a little bit, right? I'm not saying, oh, don't feel bad. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just being there with you. And that is so incredibly comforting. As a teacher, I can't lift your depression. I can't, you know, what I can do is establish a safe environment and a really safe relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Where I give you some wiggle room, but I also convey to you, hey, you do have to take responsibility though too, right? So we have to have a give and take here. This is part of what our tribe does. You know, we compromise a little bit. If you need some sad time, you know, you can have that. And at other times I'm going to say, I can't let you do that right now. You got to come forward with me on this. Well, so that and anxiety, one of the things I've taught for years with teachers is two main things. One is, it's funny, Toys R Us doesn't exist anymore, I don't think, but
it doesn't.
You know, like there's places, Amazon, where you can buy a little tiny tent that fits in the corner of the room, and it's the chill tent, right? And it could have white Christmas lights inside of it. It can have 3 inches of uncooked beans inside of it. It could have rabbit pelt. It is a soothing environment. Yeah. And that if you need to go in there, you can go into the chill tent and chill. Now, your work will be waiting for you. You cannot escape, right? Yep. But, and it's going to be inviting to everybody. Everybody's going to want to do it, but it's going to lose its luster really fast, okay? So it's an opportunity to teach the children that sometimes we just need to step back a bit and do things that are soothing, like the beans. Running your hands through beans feels really good. You know, rubbing yourself with a rabbit pelt. You know, teachers can get away with things, especially female teachers, that male teachers can't. Hey, your hands look kind of chapped. Let's rub some lotion in them. You ever had your hands massaged? Feels incredible.
Yeah, it does feel good.
You know, I don't mean to sound sexist, but a female teacher can get away with stuff like that. A male really can't. I don't think so anyhow. But
yeah, that's like, a tough line to.
It is a tough one. But there are little things like that. The anxiety thing is the same thing. You know, do you need some tent time? You're looking like you're doing that thing we've talked about, perhaps a little tent time. Or, you know, do you need to put your head on your desk and I'll put your coat over? I'll put your coat over your head. I'll do it. Because we all know how good it feels when mom puts a blanket on us. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to trigger maybe some of those little kid things that make us universally feel good. The thing I'm not going to do is put all my energy into making it go away because I can't. And then that child is going to be, oh, I failed you now too. You tried and I couldn't do it for you either. So instead, I'm just going to, you know, it's like holding your soap in the shower. If you hold it like this, it doesn't really go anywhere. But if you squeeze it really hard, it squirts out of your hand, right? So I'm just going to allow a space like this. And sometimes that means we don't get a lot done that day. It happens. But again, the teacher isn't a psychotherapist. Teachers, you know, in a way, they're like cops. Their job has gotten—
They have a lot of roles.
their jobs have gotten so big, and there's so many things that they're expected to do that isn't even core teaching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, they have to—
100% agree.
How do I let myself off the hook a little bit with this?
Yeah.
And again, there's no substitute for a good relationship with a child. And frequently that can be a nonverbal relationship. I mean, think about it as a kid. I mean, did a teacher ever wink at you, or a parent? You know, you just caught their eye and they winked at you, and it's like, oh, that rocks. It doesn't have to be a big huggy feely thing, just a wink.
Yeah.
You know?
High five, or yeah.
For recess, hey, Timmy, come here for really quick for a second. Everybody's head out. Man, you rocked it today. Go out, have fun. One little, I get chills even thinking that, one little sentence. I
Yep.
don't have to have feedback from him. He heard it.
Yep.
You know?
And you don't even know, you may not know the full details of what is going on in that child's mind that day, what they came home from, what they left at home or what they were feeling then, but just being there, like just that one sentence might actually boost their mood enough.
But again, here's the second part that I didn't say. Our tribe. When I worked in severe behavior handicap school, and they always had this, the messages on in the morning, from the overhead, right?
Mm-hmm.
We never listened to it. We always had it off. And for the first 10 minutes of class, every single day, everybody laid on the floor and we did a relaxation exercise every day. Because the time that I expended up front bought me so much more time in the back end. That if I have that one thing that when you're upset or you're ramping up and I can just kind of quietly go, hey, breathe and think about your animal, because we all have our little power animals that we've already talked about. I have to build those triggers early. I can't flip a switch later. I've got to lay the groundwork, and sometimes that takes breaking a rule like not listening to the announcements.
Yeah. No, totally understand. And that works across all grade levels from kindergarten up through high school. Because a lot of times I feel like our high school kids sort of get forgotten because they're sort of salty mini adults that haven't quite gotten to the cognitive reasoning, still have emotional brain, but they still, they do need that time at the beginning to just be ready to go. I know that I needed that as a high schooler. I couldn't just jump right into anything. So that's just the way my brain worked at the time. So I think that is a great tool and tip to use.
Again, within your tribe, there's a routine, there are traditions, there is structure, right?
Yep.
We count on these things. And if we can't get it done this morning, we're going to do it in an hour. We're going to get it done today somehow, but we're going to do our routine.
Absolutely. Well, we're at 5 o'clock. So okay. I knew we would be able to go hours and hours on this. So that being said, if you have one, just like, I guess maybe a mission statement that you could send out to the universe out there, what would that be when it's working with the emotions and high intensity of gifted children?
Planning ahead, controlling yourself, identify the giftedness within yourself and how you express it and how it might get in your way, and not forcing a child into where I want them, but allowing the space for them to be themselves. And I know that sounds like really tree-hugging, Birkenstock shoes, ponytail, but it works to have that wiggle room, right?
Yeah.
Because if I go in there and I try to control that situation, that kid's going to let me know you can't, right?
Absolutely.
So
no, that is great advice, and I truly appreciate you taking the time today and sharing this with us, both parents and teachers. And I know that we can't rush. This is not going to be fixed overnight, and we are definitely working towards creating a better tomorrow for all of us.
And one last thing, because you just triggered it. We may not be able to fix it, but that's the point. I'm not looking to fix things with kids. I'm looking to manage them, because as soon as I say I don't have to fix it, there's a lot of pressure that comes off of me and the kid. Yeah. How do we manage this? Because we're not going to fix it probably. If you have anxiety, I'm not fixing that.
Yeah. I wish there was a magic fix for that.
Yeah.
We'd all be so much happier and things would probably go much smoother in the world.
Yeah. Well, this was awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
It was awesome, and I appreciate you taking this time and sharing with us. And of course, if you have any more questions for Dr. Beljan, I will send the link to his website in the follow-up email, and I'm sure he would love to hear from you.
Me too.
And of course, as usual, we have a survey that is case sensitive. So if you could just take a few moments to go and put in your information, what you thought about today's session, and submit that, and we'll also give you your professional development certificate if you need that. And thank you everybody for attending.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.